once an engine attached to a train. Was afraid of a few drops of rain. He ran into a tunnel, wheeshed through his funnel, and refused to come out again. His driver stepped out.
What's wrong, old boy? Is the train too heavy for you? I knew there's something wrong with this damn engine.
Another engine was brought on to help push the train from behind. The second engine pushed and puffed and puffed and pushed. But the train still didn't move.
Well, if you refuse to move, I'm gonna have to tell the nearest signalman there's a stubborn engine blocking the line. And he'll have to tell Sir Topham Hatt about the delay.
The big engine was worried about what the Fat Controller had to say, but what was done was done. He was not going to move.
You know, I really love making Gauge 1 models, and I love making Gauge 1 tank engines the most. They're a nice sizable model, they're comfortable, they're visually appealing, and they're pretty easy to carry around if I need to take them to some undisclosed location. Huh, what am I doing here? Hell, my name is Tank Engine... You get it. I have absolutely no interest whatsoever into making any type of tender engine. It's just, they're too big, they're too awkward. I don't know, the tenders are a lot to carry around too. I don't know, tender engines are just not my thing. Not to mention I have to scratch build their valve gears, and that just looks complicated. There's absolutely no way I'm ever gonna be making a tender engine. Just absolutely no way. I can't, What was that? Huh. Now that I've got a BR-78 chassis, there has to be something I can do with it. Because I can't just let this sit here and catch dust. Maybe I can make a Gauge 1 Gordon. Yeah, I think that'll work.
No.
Alright. I won't. Jeez. Since I'm not going to be making a Gauge 1 Gordon, I guess there's only one other engine that uses this chassis. So, how am I going to do it? I never had any plan whatsoever to make a Henry this soon in the game, but I guess plans change. Now that I've got a chassis, I feel obligated to. With the burden of having to scratch build such a complex valve gear on a chassis, I feel like now it's as simple as getting this thing motorized and building a body around it. But how am I even gonna make a body? I mean, all the engines I've made up until now have been 3D printed. I mean, can my 3D printer even handle a project this big? Yeah, no. There is absolutely no way that my printer can print an engine this big. So now how the hell am I gonna get all the parts needed to make this Gauge 1 Henry? The original model was made of acrylic, and then eventually they made, I think, 2 brass ones in Season 10. But the brass Henry models don't have as many differences between them and the plastic model as much as, you know, the Thomas models that were made of plastic and brass. Not to mention, cutting that brass boiler would have been the death of me. Alright, let's take a quick look and check out the price for ordering some acrylic parts for Henry, because, you know, how much could it be? Bruh. Yeah, that's a no-no. We're not gonna be doing that. We'll have to we'll have to source them from somewhere else. Now, where in the world am I gonna get affordable acrylic parts to build my Gauge 1 What? What? That's it!
I've got an idea!
I know exactly who I need for the job. I know exactly who I need for the job.
Smoke and steam and ashes spouted from his funnel. They went all over the bridge and all over the boys who ran away as black ants.
Yo, LBSC.
Ugh, what?
Yeah, I'm gonna need some parts for Henry. How quickly can you get those squeezed out by?
Maybe I can fit you in at whenever and later.
No, you don't understand. I'm gonna need this as soon as possible. What? Well, it shouldn't take too long, right? Now that the parts were ordered, it was time to figure out what green to use. I've already tested out the two most popular Tamiya green paints, and like I've learned with Thomas, Tamiya ain't the way anymore. We have to go custom mix. My original thought was to use Willow Green, but finding the actual hex code for it was pretty much impossible. So after an extensive amount of research, I was able to find the proper Pantone color for Henry's green. Finding the right green was hard, but it wasn't until a year later that I was able to come up with the perfect Pantone. I noticed that the green engines like Percy and Henry, they had more of an olivey tone. After looking through the models in different lighting scenarios and from different angles, I was able to conclude that Henry, and by extension Percy, is very accurate to the Pantone color 369C. After the parts arrived, it was time to get to work. The funny thing about acrylic is that, much like brass, these parts have to be sanded on all sides and corners and edges and wherever else so that the glue that's applied can be properly secured into the micro scratches that allow the parts to bond together and hold strong. I really like acrylic because after a few minutes, Henry's tender was built, and might I say it, this thing was massive! What? Oh fuck. Because I had a full BR-78, I was able to take off that water feed pipe thingy off the actual locomotive and put it on the back of Henry's tender. It wasn't until a few days later that I was informed that he had two of them, and one of them was inside of his tender, and I wanted to... So I said, screw it, 3D print it along with the back buffer beam and glue those bastards in place. After the tender was all pretty much done and ready to go, I then used Bondo body filler. I see you, Rando. And then filled in all the cracks and seams. After the filler was dried, it was time to sand it down and then apply the primer. Now that the primer was then sprayed on the tender, it's time to let this guy dry. And while he dries, it's time to work on the main body. Most of the body was made of acrylic, the boiler is made of ABS, and all of the smaller, maybe curved bits were made of 3D printed resin. Everything here was as simple as getting everything glued together, making sure that everything's all perfectly lined up and straight and, oh god, the firebox is crooked. Okay, this is no problem. I can just undo this and it's glued, but I can undo this, don't worry. I just gotta be careful and pry it off and, oh fuck. It's okay, everything's fine. I can just continue to break off the pieces and glue them back together once I have everything even. Yeah. Oh god, yeah, this isn't too bad, right? This doesn't look bad. Nah, this won't be noticeable. I think we're good. Yeah, after making sure that everything was good acrylic-wise, and I guess by this extension firebox, I had to resin print out his funnel, dome, top feed splashers, and glue them all in place. I also printed out his steam pipes, but those come later. Oh, wait. I just realized, the parts that are, see these parts that connect to the boiler? Yes, since the boiler is curved, and the acrylic edges are not, you kind of have to give them a low taper oh god, wait, hold up. You have to sand down the edges so that the curved boiler can properly line up with the edge of the acrylic part. The tender buffer beam may have been 3D printed, but the front buffer beam is getting that authentic Marklin experience. So I cut off the back buffer beam off the BR-78 and glued it on to Henry's front. What? What's that? What? He uses the front buffer beam. I don't care. Like, I really don't. I don't at all. They look exactly the same. What do you mean, little that? What? That's gonna get covered up by the coupling anyway. I don't care. I don't give a fuck.
Thomas was waiting for the signal to drop. He was taking the Fat Controller to the big station for an important meeting with the railway inspector.
Thank you again, Thomas, for the lift to the station. You are much more reliable than the car.
Of course, sir. Thank you, sir.
As Thomas puffed towards the tunnel, he was inexplicably switched out of the way onto a siding in front of the tunnel.
What is going on here, Henry? Why are you blocking the line again?
He refuses to move, sir.
Well, I need to get to the station immediately, or I'll be late for a very important meeting. And if he doesn't move by the time I return, I'll be forced to pick up the rails and close them off in the tunnel again. But this time, forever and ever and always.
We've got another engine turned around for the journey back to the station with the goods train. You can hitch a ride to the station in the brake van.
Thank you, my good man. Oh, these big engines are causing me trouble.
Once it was cut and fit into place, it was time to glue it down. One of the biggest parts to do for Henry's body before, everything started coming together was to pretty much drill out the inside of the boiler. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't do like what I did with my Thomas, which was cut the boiler before gluing, that if I did that, the boiler would expand, it would become an issue, so it's just a lot easier to glue it down, then cut the boiler. So please note that for whenever you decide to make the acrylic model. Now that the boiler was cut and smooth around the edges, I could finally place it on top of the chassis and get a proper look at how Henry looks, and oh my god, this guy's looking crazy! Oh my god! His tender was also fitted with Markland step ladders. Once I made sure that everything was good to go, I then fitted these parts that basically helped keep the body stuck onto the chassis. But now it was time to fill in the body with old Bondo body filler and get to sanding. Of course, the process was exactly the same, just a bit more careful as the tender, and he was good to go. But now, it was time to prime. And of course, now it was time to prime, not use filler primer, and of course, because filler primer, you know how I feel, it loses all the detail, this, that, and the third, and
Coward. We have a new world to conquer. You make me sick.
On the current day version of pretty much all of the plastic models, they have a lot of paint layers built up over the 20-30 years that they were seen on screen. So instead of, wasting, 20-30 years of my life painting this Henry, I decided to do the next best thing. Filler primer is known for getting rid of a lot of detail, and for someone like me that pretty much needs all the sharp corners dulled down on the models, filler primer was just obviously the right way to go. So of course, some heavy coats of filler primer were applied to Henry's model as soon as he was completely sanded down. A few days later, after the primer was completely dry, he was water sanded smooth and ready for paint. The red was going on first, so which means I had to actually give him a pink primer around that area. But of course, once that primer dried, it was then time to paint the red. The red was easy as I already had it picked out from when I made Thomas, because all of the characters around the hit era shared the same red. What's that? They didn't have the same red. What do you mean? No, it's impossible. They all had the Coca-Cola red. We established that in the... That's not... What? No! Whatever. The red was painted and it looked pretty good. But, it was time to paint the gray. And at least the grays on the running board were exactly the same. Dude, don't. They were different grays, too.
Psych! That's the wrong...
Oh my god, I'm gonna cry! Sorry. Anyway, the running board was fully painted, and now it was time to paint the smoke box black. What? You're gonna tell me that the black used on Thomas's smoke box was different than the black on every other character's? What? You're telling me that all blacks are the same now? Wait, hold up. Yeah, I think I gotta use a different take for that. But don't worry, now that was dried, it was time to paint the green, and I already had the green problem solved, and my god, Henry was looking delicious at this point. Just look at him. After that, he was given a matte clear, and then... Yeah, I guess eventually after the matte clear was then dried, I gave him a water sand and repainted him and gave him another clear coat just to be safe. We're all good now. You see, Henry is pretty much fully painted, so I guess it was time to line. I cricket cut out a template and got to lining his tender, got to lining his cab, and everything was going smoothly. I also had to drill out holes for his handrails. I also cut a piece of styrene, I think this was 1mm, painted it black, and glued it on as his roof. I also then printed out his handrail knobs. I know you can get proper brass ones from whatever obscure British website, but I don't care. I then used brass rods as actual handrails, sprayed them silver, glued them on. I then gave him one final clear coat of Tamiya semi-gloss, and man, what I tell you, this is the most perfect semi-gloss, especially for this era of modeling. Cause this, just look at this. I don't even have to explain why this shit is good. Now I'm gonna keep it as clear, open, and concise with y'all as possible. After Henry was painted and pretty much aesthetically done, it was pretty much smooth sailing from there. His chassis was already built, so all I had to do was attach a motor to that thing and get him rolling. I've made hundreds of iMechs in the past, so this part was relatively simple. And since his body was pretty big, pretty much bigger than Thomas's, putting a smoke mech in him was as easy as putting a pump next to the mech, plugging it in, giving it power, and bow. Look at that output! My god! All of Henry's electronics were stuffed into his tender, and the 2 batteries and whatever else can fit in there with ease. And I'd like to say, that's him done. Henry is one of the easiest models I've made, simply because everything needed to know about the actual Henry prop was already been and done by a few other people, so he was honestly the simplest and easiest model I've made. And with that, let's go take a look on how we're gonna get that guy out of the tunnel.
Oh, I knew this would be a waste. This damn thing won't work.
Okay, can't we just scrap it then? Get some money for the salvage parts?
No, it's too flawed. This thing shouldn't even exist in the first place.
Well, we could always salvage it. Scrap should be worth quite a bit.
No, I've got a connection that might be able to pawn this off to some sucker. But it won't work. It can't work. It can't do anything. He's practically useless.
Okay, well, where should I put it for now?
Leave him outside. If it rusts, nothing of value will be lost.
Oh, you're not still afraid of the rain, are you? It's just, you could cause confusion and delay if you don't come out. Come on, Henry. You're not going to let a little water hold you back, are you? I know you're scared, Henry. Now you must be brave. You know what, Henry? The Fat Controller still cares about you. You've crashed, broken down, been rebuilt, and now here you are, one of the strongest engines on the line. You're big, strong Henry, and nothing can slow you down. And you are a really useful engine.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.